Thank you. So, in our Transit Equity Day series, we are bringing you a lot of topics that are relevant to you all. And we wanted to bring something relevant for this week, which is National School Bus Safety Week. So, most folks don't think about school buses as being transit, but it's actually one of the largest transit systems we have. Every city, every county has some kind of school bus transportation. And it's really imperative that we look at this because we really do care about the safety of our children and how they get to and from school. But that's been threatened in some areas. And we have a really lovely panel who is going to explain to us about what they've been doing to preserve a lot of that. So I'm going to introduce them and bring them on to explain what they've been doing. And we'll start off with somebody that you all know and you've all seen on these panels. And that is Sara Catalinotto, who is a mother of two and a founder of the citywide volunteer group known as Parents to Improve School Transportation, or PIST NYC. PIST has been organizing since 2010 with parents and guardians, education councils, unions, disability advocates, educators, attorneys, and elected officials. That's a lot of people. They're a clearinghouse of information for caregivers on how to prevent and correct certain transportation problems. And at this time, they're striving to place a proposal on the November 2024 ballot for a school bus bill of rights, which if you've seen the last Transit Equity Day, we've shown a video based off of what they were doing with that and why that's imperative. She's definitely going to explain this a little bit more. But it's essentially to enforce the city's responsibility to provide safe, stable, and shorter school bus routes. Demands include better conditions for riders and workers, better communication with families and schools, upgraded vehicles that don't pollute, and immediate steps to reverse staffing shortages. And we welcome her again to bring on the heat. So Sara, take it away.
Hi. Okay. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I guess in way of a disclaimer, this time last year we were planning to go rally at the United Nations on the International Day for Persons with Disabilities. So we learned that there are these international conventions of the rights of the child and the rights of people with disabilities. And so our work, of course, intersects both of those. Um, and when we're talking about safety, there are different degrees of danger, and we understand that some of those, we've been reminded these last couple weeks how, a lot of children in a lot of places are subject to mortal dangers of hunger and war and things of that sort. And we don't claim that our kids have a monopoly, but the the wording of everything in those conventions is that it's according to what the country can has the resources to do. So we can look around and see that this country has the resources to keep our kids safe on the way to school and back. Um, and also, these are the children who are in under our watch, and that we have the most power to advocate for, while also being concerned with everybody's kids everywhere. So, um, our organization, PIST, is currently working on a couple of things. I'm really happy that we have people here from um, parents, we have some people who are drivers, we even have some people who try to figure out how to make the routes themselves more student friendly. Um, and I'm hoping there'll be time in the Q&A for people as well as other active parents in our network who do a lot of work to try to advocate for better systems. We have called in New York for a school bus bill of rights, and this is something that we discussed a long time ago in our founding uh, with the largest school bus union here, the ATU 1181, that was able to tell us the insight of how things used to be versus how they were once we had this mayoral control and they started, you know, giving out contracts where they wanted and then cutting things where they wanted. So in our inbox today, which is pistnyc@gmail.com, I couldn't even answer all of the emails because getting ready for this program, but there were two people on Facebook, one where her 3-year-old is on these buses preschool, and you know, whatever time that school ends, this kid is getting home at 5 something, 6 o'clock. What's wrong with this? This is not good. You know, we definitely have heard about a number of young children on long routes, children who were just recently toilet trained, and they could be, you know, stuck in a situation like that. There's rashes, there are things that can happen. um, we've had situations, and if you show, I don't know, Bakari, if you're able to show um, any of the points of our school bus bill of rights, what we really are saying is that those who have the on the ground experience have a lot more knowledge about how this could be done better than those who are just, you know, they were appointed, it's their office, or they were hired without anyone consulting us. So, for example, we're seeing here the safety and health points of this school bus bill of rights, and it's going to be a ballot referendum, which I'll go more into. The vehicles themselves have the potential to be very safe. I'm sorry, Ricardo, could you back up? Okay. Um, School bus vehicles are designed safer, and it's much better for our kids to be in there than to be in the same number of cars as every seat in that bus. Better for the planet, and fewer accidents actually happen. Oh, hi Paulette, you got to mute, mama. Okay, climate control is a big issue because kids get overheated. They may be taking medication that doesn't work when they're overheated, when their body's too hot. We have kids with asthma. Other people can speak to just how bad that can get sometimes in the summers here. Sustainable meaning what Bakari was referring to, the electric school buses, they're trickling in and taking their time for 2035. But we already see, you know, things burning and melting. And a just transition so that you don't throw away the mechanics who you have, but you use their know-how and, you know, train a new generation to work on these new vehicles. We've said that these rides should never ever be more than 90 minutes long. And actually, the state education commissioner agrees with that. But the routes here in this city are often programmed to be just under 2 hours. Like that's the maximum that they decided was okay if you're going from one borough to a next, which for you other parts of the country would be, I guess, one county to the next. And of course, that's, you know, also violated and the routes go over. And now they're starting to use the excuse that they don't have enough drivers. But we would tell them at the time, don't downgrade the wages for the drivers and you can hold on to more drivers. Parents, when we had this conversation, said that the stress of unstable busing has a whole ripple effect on the mental health of everyone in the house. And it actually also affects the economy because people can't get to work if that bus doesn't come and they have to take their kid. Okay, I'm ready for the next slide, please. So, of course, nothing works unless there's enough drivers. The EPP is their employee protection plan, incentives, and they're still fighting for a good contract that expired in the summertime. I hope Nico can give us a quick update on that, but the parents did step up and showed that, we hope they don't have to strike, but we agree that they got to get paid and trained. So we're talking about job opportunities that the disabled community can have a role in making busing better. Um, we want a pipeline to get more monitors who are called here attendants or even matrons. That trainers could come from those who are educators and, in consultation with the union, what's the training that folks want to get and how to be the most safe and how to approach the children in the most effective ways and resolve disputes. Even dispatch and customer service, we've got tons of people who wait so long to get anybody to answer the phone. And that's not safe because somebody might be calling from the road saying we had an accident, but dispatchers, they don't have enough people to answer those calls. And we need to recruit bus paraprofessionals, which not every state has, but for students with a specific behavior or medical need, they need a one-on-one person, not just the attendant who's responsible for the whole bus. That affects their attendance as well. Okay, I am ready for the next. And so this is what it boils down to, is who's running this, the governance. We want to empower a panel of representatives of the parents, the educators, the bus workers, the disability advocates, to suggest, approve, or veto pupil transportation policy decisions. A lot of the decisions that have been made, as I said, do things like throw multiple children onto the same bus from different schools. If there's a dispute from one child to the other, they don't have the same principal who can call them together and call the parents and iron it out. They also, are going all over the place and they're supposed to be at two different schools, both at 8 a.m. Time space continuum makes that impossible. So I think that's just a sampling of what we're trying to craft with an election lawyer into a ballot referendum, yes or no, that we will have a body that has more community control over the service of busing, because it is a civil right of the children to get to school. And it can, as we'll soon see, it can be a question of life and death, how high quality this service and how important it's considered, and we need to act accordingly. I think I can stop there. That was a mouthful. Got any pictures of my group? All I see right now is one of the participants. Uh-oh. Bakari, are you? Okay. Oh, yeah, that was us having a meeting at the Rainbow Garden in the South Bronx to get ready for the start of school and the potential of a school bus strike, how we would support each other, as well as the demands of the workers. Next. That was us on Transit Equity Day. It was a freezing cold day. So the people who were very brave came through and we had an amazing conversation. And you can see that the sign says the school bus equals access and school is a human right. That's back to what I began with about, the United Nations conventions. Anything else? Oh, that was us on Labor Day. And you can see we have our banner next to the banner of the Union Local. And some people who may be on this call are also in this picture. And that was, us getting onto the streets and making sure that the rest of New York City knows that it's not, it's not always a conflict between the consumer and the producer of this service. I will add that, of course, down the road, and if we had more control, there should be some kind of conflict resolution, because when these routes are so stressful for everybody, there are clashes between, the parent and the driver. Sometimes it gets ugly. And on a very small scale, because we do have a good relationship, organization to organization, there's possibilities to intervene and just remind people, to put yourself in the other person's shoes, and let's smooth it out and move on. But that's only where there's that connection through the union. There's a lot of companies that are not as organized, and um, it seems like people are quitting in those places every day. That's another thing we hear about. But we're fighting for the ideal situation, that people are happy to be doing the job, that they're loving the job, and therefore that's what the kids receive, is that love and that good care. So school bus safety, number one, school bus bill of rights. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Sara. That was very, very insightful, and I love the work that you all are doing up in New York City. And we also put the links for PIST New York City, so if you'd like to follow them, just please go to their website, www.pistnyc.org, and as well, the email pistnyc@gmail.com. Now moving on. So we've had that instance of a large city that focuses on that. And that also goes into the safety aspects of it, of what happens when it doesn't follow through and tragedy strikes of it. So bringing forward, we have Najmah Nash. Najmah is a devoted mother and an advocate for enhanced safety measures in school bus transportation. Following the tragic death of her daughter, Najmah has committed herself to fight for the rights and protection of special needs children, ensuring their safety during bus rides and to and from school. Through her courageous efforts for Fajir's Law, Najmah aims to bring forth positive change in transportation protocols that will safeguard the lives of vulnerable students worldwide. Najmah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Bakari. And thank you for having me and allowing me to share my story and the progress that I've done thus far. Again, I'm Faja Williams' mom. And since we lost her, I've been making it my priority to enforce change and safety within school transportation for children with disabilities, as well as provide awareness for Emanuel syndrome, which is a rare chromosome disorder in which Faja was diagnosed with when she was about 3 months old. I would like to share Faja's Law petition with all of you here in hopes of you signing the petition, as well as share with anyone who's willing to listen. And Bakari, if you can put up the petition for me. I won't read it, it's kind of lengthy, but hopefully you guys get a chance to look at it yourself. It's on change.org, and you can just search Faja's Law and it should come up. As of today, we've accumulated 21,926 signatures in about a 2.5 month time span. My goal is to continue to spread the word and gain as many signatures as possible to spark attention with legislators. I've had the pleasure of working with CPAC, which is Special Education Parent Advisory Committee here in Franklin Township, New Jersey. And to shed light on some small victories, we were able to have some safety protocols added in September for this school year by the Board of Education for special education students. I've also been collaborating with the New Jersey Ombudsman for individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities, the New Jersey Council on Developmental Disabilities, New Jersey Regional Family Support Planning Council, and a few others that are extending efforts to help facilitate enacting Faja's Law, as well as PIST New York City. I have the pleasure of talking with Sara on a few ideas and suggestions as well. Although I have not been contacted by lawmakers, I won't let that discourage me from fighting every day. I'm still reaching out to the media, news outlets, as well as, excuse me, creating a strong social media presence to engage more conversations that need to be discussed regarding transportation safety. I'm currently trying to reach out to and meet with other families who have experienced similar tragedies such as mine. And like I said, I would like to, remain hopeful and steadfast throughout this entire journey. Finally, my goal now is to continue advocating and building the FAJA movement ESA, which stands for Emmanuel Syndrome Awareness, researching if there's any other laws such as what I'm proposing already exist in the US, researching transportation safety laws and statutes that are currently in place to further cultivate FAJA's law before presenting it to the legislators. I encourage maybe like any nonprofit organizations, committees, social justice groups and or advocacy groups that would like to help in any way or be a part of FAJA movement to reach out to me directly. I'll add all of my contact information as well as links, including my latest news interview in the chat if anyone is interested. But that's basically what I've been doing. That's basically also what's been keeping me, above board, above water, with handling the tragedy. Has been hard on myself and my family. But I think just through advocating and trying to push FAJA's law, it's been helping me out a lot, as well as therapy and friends and family. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone, to you, Bakari, as well as Sara from PIST New York City, because it's just, it's been hard, but I'm getting through it with the help of others. I said I'll put some stuff in the chat now.
Thank you, Najmah, and huge condolences to you and your family. I know this is a really difficult time, but just understand that you're definitely around family with us. And we'd love to invite you back for our disability panel because I think that is really key as far as making sure that laws pass and it's replicated across the country. So yes, definitely, if you'd like to come back and if you'd like for us to post this around and share this around so that we can, we will absolutely do so.
Yes, most definitely. I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Well, we will move on.
Bakari, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for joining us. I stepped out of the room for a second. I apologize. But can you kind of in 30 seconds tell us the tragedy about your daughter's death on the school bus?
Sure. So I enrolled her in the summer program. I think it's like the extended school year program. She goes this was her second year attending. She was 6 years old, and she rode the bus with a bus driver as well as an aide for her. And she was picked up as normal in the morning. And then I want to say maybe about 35, 40 minutes later, I received a call from her school stating that she arrived to the school unresponsive, and that they were currently performing CPR on her. So after speaking with the school, I went to the hospital, but basically she wasn't strapped correctly, and she had poor trunk control, which is one of the issues she had from Emmanuel syndrome. So if she's not strapped correctly in the wheelchair, like I said, poor trunk control, she would just continue to slide. And I believe that's what happened. She continued to slide down, and then it's a 4-point harness from here that's supposed to be connected, and I guess it wasn't. So it was just sliding up on her neck, and she asphyxiated from the seat harness.
I pray for your loss. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
And thank you for being an advocate.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now moving on, We're going to go to another county that's also had its issues of busing, and especially with buses that are cut. Now we've seen a lot of actual transit buses that are cut, but you wouldn't necessarily note about school busing being cut. So, Corinne Happel is about to explain that with us. Corinne Happel is a physician board certified in pediatrics and allergy and immunology. As a resident of Howard County, Maryland, and parent of 5 children, she began to advocate against bus cuts in April 2023 and founded Neighbors for Buses. Neighbors for Buses is a nonpartisan grassroots community advocacy group made up of concerned community members in Howard County that voluntarily advocate for safe transportation and education. Corinne, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Bakari, and thanks for hosting this panel. It's great to learn from others who are advocating for safe and reliable school bus transportation. So I made a few slides to help share. I know Howard County is not as recognized as New York City and some other bigger cities that are presenting today. So as Bakari mentioned, we're Neighbors for Buses. We advocate for safe transportation for children to and from school. We started our advocacy efforts in April when we found out that approximately 3,500 children were cut from school bus service in Howard County without a public hearing. And I appreciate what Sara said when she was talking about PIST NYC efforts, just how elected officials are often hiding behind the excuse of it is difficult to get drivers right now, rather than trying to fix the problem and recruit and find ways to make school bus service, being a school bus driver, more attractive. A lot of elected officials are simply hiding behind the excuse of there are insufficient drivers. So for a variety of reasons, our school district decided to just cut service without having any sort of broad conversation with citizens that they represent. And so families were shocked. Most people did not know that they were affected by these cuts. And by the time they were even released to the public as to who would and would not have bus service, it was too late for many families to make adjustments for this incoming school year. So as of this school year, less children have school bus service, and that started in September. So a little bit of background. I know many may not know where Howard County is. We're a lovely county that's situated about halfway between Baltimore City, so that's highlighted with a black arrow, that boxed area in the southern portion of Baltimore County, that's Baltimore, and then in red is Howard County, and then a little further south, not part of Maryland, is Washington, D.C., where some families live in Howard County and have one parent might travel to Baltimore, one parent might travel to DC. We also have people who work locally in Howard County. We're the sixth largest county in population in Maryland, of about 335,000 people. But what's interesting is that we do have the highest average property tax payments in the state based on the property tax rate, and then the high cost of living and high property values in Howard County. And so deficiency of funds seems like a poor excuse to cut school bus service when there is quite a bit of income coming into the county. Columbia, Maryland was developed in central Howard County. That's where most of our schools are located. In the 1960s, it was designed specifically to be a mixed income, ethnically diverse, mixed community. There's lots of parks and recreational facilities. And I did want to highlight, I'll point this out later in the talk, is that there are lovely public trails that go through the woods, and these are paved paths, and there are some concerns related to those paved paths as they relate to cutting school bus service. So the school system serves about 57,000 students in 77 schools. And we really don't have public transit the way other larger communities might have. We do have some bus service, public bus service through the Regional Transportation Authority, but most of those do not take children to school, and bus stops are not convenient to schools for the most part. Except where required by special education law, Maryland law does not protect school bus rights in Maryland. So we are a state that has no law that requires any district to have school bus service. So all counties in Maryland could stop offering all school bus service, and that would be okay per Maryland law. All counties have some school bus service, but it is not a protected right in Maryland. Students are required to receive an education, but students do not necessarily have to have access to a school bus, even if they live very far away from school. So our advocacy efforts really are fixed on the point that school buses are the safest way to get children to and from school. That has been reported for years by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And therefore, any cuts to school bus service are inherently cutting child safety. And so if a district, if a county decides they want to cut service, it seems like that should be a very huge conversation in the community. Families rely on school bus service, and to suddenly cut it can create a lot of safety concerns for families who lose service. So our first concern with the way school buses were cut in our county was that our county is a county that gives children service, school bus service, even if they're close to school, if there's not a safe physical route to school. But when the cuts were made, they were looking at maps and speed limits, and they had never physically gone in person to the new areas that school buses were cut from. And so this is an example from a community. I did try to show there's a blind hill where as you drive down, you cannot see oncoming traffic, and there's no sidewalks here. Sidewalks are not a requirement in Maryland to, or in our district in order to be a walker to school. But in this area, you really can't see children who are walking on the road. And so there has been at least one fatality locally along this route just based on poor visibility. And so families in this neighborhood in particular, this was one of the neighborhoods where families were very concerned that there just isn't a great route to get to school safely. This is one of our successes. So the route that is pictured here, the neighborhood did get their service back. So I did want to share one small victory. There's a lot of advocacy work that we do. And I think as advocates, most of us know that even small victories, we need to celebrate them, hoping that we'll get larger ones along the way. So that is a small victory for us. So just to highlight, many neighborhoods that lost bus service do not have sidewalks, and many of these neighborhoods did not get a resolution and still don't have school bus coverage. Safe Routes to School is a nationwide advocacy effort for a nonprofit that helps promote safe travel to and from school. And they actually recommend a separate surface from vehicle traffic for children walking to school, and not what is occurring in this picture. So this picture is from their website, and I like the way it shows this rolling hill, which is very typical of Howard County. We have a lot of rolling hills. And so as a car is coming from further into the picture, if a car were approaching these children and teens, they would not necessarily see those kids until it might be too late to stop. So having children directly on the roadway without a sidewalk is in and of itself a safety hazard, and then add in rolling hills and it can make visibility even more difficult and safety even more challenged. There's a very different safety concern in other parts of Howard County. So the further towards the center of Howard County that you get, so that's Inner Columbia, there are these beautiful paved trails that are designed for recreation and enjoyment. Unfortunately, they're also fairly isolated. And so it's a very different concern. Families who are required to use these routes to get to school are much more concerned that as you increase the walk distance that students are using these paths for, you place children for long periods of time in these isolated areas that there is not great public visibility. There's also have been crimes in these areas. And so if a child were assaulted or had trouble with an abuser, it would be difficult for that child to get help in these circumstances, particularly older children who are old enough to walk to school without supervision. I'm a board certified pediatrician, so a huge concern in my mind when I saw the numbers of how many children were cut was that the greatest number of children that were cut from school bus service, these 3,500 kids, the highest number actually affected elementary school students. So when you're talking about young elementary school students, these are children who do need supervision going to and from school. In Maryland, our law dictates that children under 8 should not be left without supervision. That is considered neglect. So you can't tell a pre-K student, a kindergartner, a first grader, a second grader to just go walk to school now that they've been cut from bus service from a mile or more away. you do need to supervise them. And the problem with that, especially when you're announcing to these families so late in the game that they're not going to have school bus service in a few months, and many families didn't even find out with the initial announcement because it was done so quietly. The concern for that is that for a caregiver to supervise a walk that's over a mile, that caregiver is going to have to get, if they don't have access to a car, they're going to have to take the child over a mile to school, then do the same thing coming back, and then do that again in the afternoon to pick up the child. And so when you're talking about families who work hourly jobs and need to be, they don't have flexible hours, they can't work up at night to make up these hours, that's lost income. But it also leaves some families with a difficult choice of keeping their job and leaving their child under supervised because they really don't have great options. And so that's a huge concern just from a child safety perspective. And then I just wanted to highlight too that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration does advise continued supervision until children reach age 10. So again, even your later elementary years until you're 10, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration recommends that children be supervised, especially on these longer walks to school, not saying you're going to be safe, go by yourself on these longer routes going to school. In our community, we have a lot of car riders. So in the old walk zones that were closer to school, we already had too many cars in many of the schools that were, so too many families who were closer to school were already choosing for a variety of reasons not to walk to school. And that has led to unsafe conditions. I've had many parents, I've had many staff members come to me anonymously because they don't necessarily want to come out publicly expressing their concerns and don't want to make their schools look bad. But there have been a lot of concerns with school rider lines dropping off and picking up. And those concerns dated before the bus cuts. And that's a huge concern. So rather than saying, let's as a community make sure that we're helping more kids not use cars going to school, we cut buses from kids who live further away, which doesn't make sense. And so in our local community, we had a child who was struck by a car in a car rider line, and that's really related to decreased visibility in the school zones. So at the bottom here, you see a picture of cars just waiting that they can't even get into the school parking lot because there's so much backup and drop off and pickup times. Pickup times in particular can be very problematic. And having those cars there means that children who are walking nearby, cyclists trying to go through, are going to be less visible to the surrounding traffic. And then I wanted to highlight that, again, we're for a county that collects so much revenue through local taxes. We now have the worst high school transportation policy, if you will, in terms of the distance that students are required to walk. Or not get bus service. And so students, even if they live more than 2 miles away, based on the way Howard County measures the distance, they may have to walk 2.25 to 2.3, et cetera, miles from their home, because the school system only uses the property line to property line measurement, meaning that if your home is situated behind a school system that has a school that has a really large football field and other sports fields, you actually have to walk through all those fields to get to the school in order for that 2-mile measurement. You have to walk additional distance beyond that 2 miles. There is a high risk of sexual abuse and assaults, and that should not be downplayed. I always have people shocked when they see these statistics, but they're real. Approximately 1 out of 4 adolescent girls reports a history of sexual abuse or assault, and approximately 1 out of 20 adolescent boys, 17-year-olds, are reporting sexual abuse and assault. So those are real numbers. And when families report that they have concerns about students walking in isolated paths, I do think that our elected leaders need to listen to those concerns, because those are real numbers. Our upcoming, I guess our next push as Neighbors for Buses is that after all our advocacy work over the summer, the Board of Education said, okay, we didn't give you a public hearing before the buses are cut. We'll give you a public hearing 60 days after the buses were cut. There's been a lot of complications. I'm always happy to talk more about buses and what's been happening for the last 60 days, because there were a lot of other concerns that have happened in the first couple months of school with our buses in Howard County. But our big push now is to convince the Board of Education that we still care. Kids lost buses and they're coping, they're figuring things out, but we think Howard County is worse off because of it. And so we do want our elected leaders to make a change. And we'll plan to speak out on November 16th. So thanks so much for inviting. I look forward to answering questions or talking more with each of you.
Thank you, Corinne. And huge shout out to you for bringing this up as an issue. Must be really difficult for a lot of the families, for a lot of these kids, and especially with a suburban county like Howard County that already doesn't have as much public transportation. So huge good luck to you and those families out there. Keeping in Maryland, there's also the common theme that you've seen so far is that there's no laws to protect any of these students within this transportation. And we're now about to hear from another group that's working to rewrite that. Joining us now is Ruth Farfel. Ruth works for the Fund for Educational Excellence in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, they support and partner with a lot of folks within the Baltimore City Public Schools in a variety of ways. Ruth leads programmatic work with the fund's analysis and engagement team. She supports all aspects of the fund's qualitative research, reports, including identifying topics, research design, data collection, writing, and follow-up. In addition, she leads and coordinates school choice workshops and resource sharing for families and students on the school choice process. Ruth is a graduate of the University of Maryland School of Social Work, and she holds a bachelor's in sociology from Washington College, and she grew up in Baltimore City and is a Baltimore City Public Schools alum. Ruth, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Please excuse my voice. It's not working today. I wanted to, I'll quickly share my screen. I am going to share a little bit about my organization and also the study that we did 2.5 years ago now. So the Fund for Educational Excellence is a nonprofit that works really closely with Baltimore City Public Schools. We do everything from fundraising to, like Bakari said, school choice, resource sharing, and workshops. We have an early childhood program with Hopkins. So we kind of run the gamut on how we partner and support. If we have capacity and funding and resources, we try to help and support the district as much as possible. So we really look at just expanding resources, thinking about solutions in new ways, and also highlighting deep continued challenges of the school district. And one of those is transit. So we did a study 2 years ago, and we interviewed 274 students across Baltimore City. And this is the only district in Maryland where students rely on the MTA to get to and from school. They're about 18% of the annual ridership on core service. And so they're a huge part of riders in Maryland. And we've seen and continue to see that they're not talked about, they're not cared about, and they're not really listened to at all. So I'll talk about these recommendations, but before I do, I wanted to share, all the things that have been talked about today are things that the students told us in their stories. Safety, lost learning time, reliability, those are the big themes that came out of our report. And to go off the last presentation, safety was probably number one. Students talked a lot about just community violence around them as they're going to school, sitting on a bus stop, but also violence happening to them. Many young women talked about sexual harassment and feeling uncomfortable just all the time, and doing things to make sure that they feel safe, which adds another layer of just like energy and stress. And then, of course, we had, a little bit more extreme, but students tell us that they were robbed at gunpoint. So it's really, really awful. And honestly, the more I talk about it, the more angry I get because our students deserve better. All these students deserve better, whether they're riding yellow buses or public buses. Um, so as we do with every report that we put out, we provide recommendations to the entities that have more power and over decisions than we do. But it's the hopes of partnership and collaboration. We never, put people on blast to just put them on blast. We really hope that we can work together and solve problems together. So in that vein, we ask students directly, what do you want? What would you like to see? And many of them were just like, we need more buses and on time. They're being passed, the buses will pass them even when they're not crowded. There's a lot of animosity towards students, particularly Black students in Baltimore. So there's just a lot happening. And so in terms of recommendations, students just wanted like kind of some basic safety resources and things that happen, like more lighting at a bus stop, an app to report harassment, something like that. So we know there's little things too, like bus operators oftentimes don't even allow students on. They had a physical one card about 2 years ago when we did this report, and even if they didn't have their card but were dressed like students, they weren't allowed on. So they had to find another way to get to school. In terms of safety for our recommendations, we had proposed a sexual harassment campaign. And I don't know if any of you have been in Baltimore lately or seen some of our transit stops. There are some posters, which are great, but the MTA did not, contact us or ask us, what we thought. They just kind of put this out here and said they are working on more. So a lot of the recommendations that we made, they said that they would, heard them and would do them. And when this report came out, we got a lot of attention because of the content. And I have to say that right now we don't meet with the MTA regularly. We don't hear from them. And the school district has not made any movements as well on their part of things. So we need help. We need advocates. My organization is not an advocacy organization directly. Since this report, I got to know Bakari and I've been sitting on advocacy groups, but there is no group dedicated to students in Baltimore to try to get service to be better. There are transit organizations and they are great, but no one is talking specifically about students. So I think that was my piece. As you can tell, I'm very frustrated, and I hope that all of us can work together because we all know how important these issues are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. And yes, I've had the huge pleasure of attending one of the Fund for Educational Excellence meetings, and it's really wonderful work that they do. And also to just kind of reiterate what she's spoken on, transit here in Baltimore is horrible, and for the fact that kids have to take that because there are very few school buses here, and they don't show up on time, so the kids get penalized for that. And I even live near two of the major schools over here. I live near Dunbar High School and City Springs, which are two major schools which utilize these buses, and these buses are packed full. And MTA was trying to cut one of them, and it's just difficult to try to work with these folks who don't even consider these students as part of the population for using transit. So huge shout out to Ruth and everyone at Fund for Educational Excellence for doing so. But now I wanted to open up to questioning, but I also wanted to honor all the folks who are on this call today who also are working in conjunction with school bus safety. So if you are working in any sense of this. I know Sara invited a lot of folks here from New York City, so if you'd like to just take yourself off mute and just explain from what you're doing and kind of how you're in this conversation, feel free to do so.
Hi, my name is Molly. I work as the Education and Employment Community Organizer for Center of the Disabled for Independence of the Disabled New York. I've met Sara once or twice at a few meetings, and hopefully we'll be meeting her a lot more, especially regarding her School Bus Bill of Rights. I'm working on several coalitions specifically devoted to transportation and school bus transportation for New York City schools. We recently had what they're calling an almost strike, but was actually a partial strike. And it's really highlighting so many other problems within the New York City school system, including accessibility, because a part of the reasons our bus systems are so inefficient are because there are only a third of schools in New York City are 100% physically accessible, which is so few schools for so many students. So it's an enormous problem. So we're trying to tackle it from all angles. And I'll put my information in the chat if anyone wants to reach out to me. Also, one of the things that I'm working on separate from that, but it sounds like there's a kind of a combined need for it, is on sexual assault in the disability community. So Ruth, if you'd like to contact me on that, I don't have Maryland specific numbers, but I do have a lot of federal numbers. And Corinne, same deal.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Molly. Anyone else?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lupe Hernandez, she, her, ella pronouns. I am one of the community organizers for education and opportunity with the New York City Office of the Public Advocate, Jumani D. Williams. However, and I am personally engaged in this work long before I worked at the Public Advocate's office, but happy to be here as repping the office in this space today. But my history with my advocacy work with PIST and school bus in general goes back to when my child was only 2 years old. And I currently sit on the task force here in New York City. It was a mayoral appointed task force addressing transportation for our students in temporary housing, and that does include our foster children, and many of our newest New Yorkers that have been enrolling into our New York City public schools. So I am on the front lines, and we've been working with PIST in creating the School Bus Bill of Rights, as well as just supporting the labor workforce and the challenges that these contracts pose on the entire system, and specifically some of the most vulnerable populations within our New York City public schools. Very happy to be here in community with you, and looking forward to collaborating to creating definitely more transit equity here in New York City, and appreciate all the wealth of shared experiences throughout the country. So thank you for putting this together. And my information is in the chat, but I will put it again for anyone that missed it earlier.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us, Lupe. Anyone else?
I'll go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Cody Carlo. I work with a company called Easy Routing. Sara invited me here to the meeting today. I've been working with Sara for about the last year or so. And really what got me connected with Sara was I'm relatively new to this space. I've been working with Easy Routing for about the last 2 years now. And I was doing some research on New York City public schools. I read about kind of some of the insanely long, ride times, elementary school students that were sitting on the bus for 2.5, 3 hours at a time. At that time, when I first reached out to Sara, I actually had a 2 or 3-year-old who I personally couldn't even imagine sitting on a school bus for 2 or 3 hours, especially not either way. And so we've kind of just been exploring, some of those shortcomings of the city's transportation system, and figuring out, areas where our company might be able to help provide a solution. So a big focus of what we do is increasing the level of communication between the districts and the parents, simplifying the routing process on the district side, and enabling simple and flexible routing, especially to accommodate, your special needs students who may have more irregular schedules. They may have, one program that they go to on a Monday and a different program that they go on Thursday and Friday. You would think that, the transportation routing software products that the school districts were using would be something that could easily accommodate situations like that. But about 2 years ago, I found out that that was absolutely not the case. So we have a big focus on, like I said, increasing communication, enabling, real-time data transfer between the district and the community, especially as it pertains to bus delays. Sara, we've seen New York City public schools bus delay page. It's very old, it's very archaic, and it relies on somebody to manually throughout the day update that listing with updated, accurate information. Easy routing, we believe we have a much different and much better way to do that kind of thing, that not only provides that information quicker to the parents, but also takes it off of the workload on the district, so making it a win-win and making it easier for everybody. So we've been digging into the details in New York City, me, Sara, and Lupe, but I know we have Baltimore City. I know we have Howard County out here as well. So I'm very, very interested to learn, about some of the struggles that your districts are facing. I've seen that across some of the bigger districts, it seems like they all have a lot of the same problems that are just displaying themselves in slightly different ways. So I'm really interested to learn more from you guys, and also use the information that I gather from you guys to inform new changes in our software development team, so that we can continually just refine the product to be more beneficial, not just to the students in the district, but also to the parents across the country as well.
Thank you so much, Cody. That is really informative, because I think that's something that a lot of folks don't realize is, how hot it can get on these buses, and especially because a lot of these school districts, and I know from my experiences growing up in the South, sometimes we started school like last week of July. So those buses are already like just terribly hot. So,
so you can't sit on that thing for 2.5 hours. That's too long to sit on that hot bus.
Right. And then we're talking about like school routes being so long, like, and especially if you're in deep in the country and you're sitting on a bus, first one picked up, but last one off, and you've just been sweating, and then those seats just get so hot and sticky. So yeah, absolutely love what you all are doing with that.
Really appreciate that, Bakari. And that's a great point that you made. We don't want those students for sitting on the bus longer than they have to. And one of the things that we've been able to help districts do, because our system doesn't use third-party technology, it was all built from the ground up exclusively for K-12 transportation, is that we can consider those things like maximum riding time, maximum walking distance, a lot of different factors that kind of conventional routing software programs that are used in this space just really aren't designed to consider at all, really.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we got a lot of Atlanta folks in here. Shout out to Tamara Jones, Atlanta School Board Education at Large, seat 7. Huge shout out to Waukesha, who worked with Let's Propel ATL. Shout out to Let's Propel ATL. Like I've done some work with them when I lived in Atlanta. So huge shout out to them and their Vision Zero program. Anyone else?
I don't know if you see my hand or not, but this is Sheila here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I belong to a lot of different organizations. One of them that I belong to is the J for J Alliance, Journey for Justice Alliance, and they're starting their EOE Power Series is what they're calling it. It actually starts tonight. No, I'm sorry, it started last night at 7 o'clock. But if you get a chance, it's J for J, Journey for Journalists Alliance, please reach out and support them on what they're doing with school buses and educating folks. And they might be working with some of you folks out of New York, because I know they had someone on the call last night that reported out about some of the activity in New York. What we're doing here in Fort Wayne, I just met with CityLink. I've shared with Bakari some of the issues that we have here with individuals with long tenure being terminated. Our conversation today was supposed to have been basically about Rosa Parks' birthday and what that would look like. We're coming up on the end of the 2-year commitment with the APTA. That was an agreement. It was a 2-year pilot program. And so February will be the 2-year report out. And so today in that wrap up session, we talked about the core principles. There were 5 core principle areas, and we stated that we were going to give them a report card A through F. And their attorney jumped in. She was in the room and proceeded to give me a letter of how many folks they fired in the last 12 months or whatever. But it's like, I'm not here for that. These folks have filed, grievance, arbitration. I don't want to talk about that, but Bakari, we really need help here. There was a public meeting last night. I read off the 5 core principles to them. And now they have a problem with us giving them an A through F report card. So I don't know how we're going to evaluate these folks from the 2 years. I don't know if anyone else have done a report out of, maybe someone on this call have a suggestion other than an A through F, I guess a 1 through 5, but we're still going to evaluate them. So I don't know if anyone else have was a part of that 2-year pilot program, but we did get our CEO to sign off on that. And yeah, end of report.
Thank you so much, Sheila. And to provide a little context about it, yes, there were a lot of transit operators in Fort Wayne, Indiana, who were unjustly terminated from their positions. Some who I've spoken with within the past 2 weeks that were responding. One actually saved someone's life and was terminated because it was giving a controlled substance to a minor. So this seems like they're dialing back from a lot of the responsibilities that they haven't kept up within the transit agency. So yes, if anyone knows any ways to help this, because we do want to be able to uplift this, please let us know. We want to get as loud as we want to with this because no one's reporting on this. So if there's anyone who can help us out, please do. We've reached out to the state fed in Indiana for their assistance with this. So we're still waiting to hear back from them. So yes, please uplift those in Fort Wayne, Indiana at CityLink. Because there's a lot of covering up that's happening with that, even to the point to where they don't even want to see the report card, which is not illegal. So it just sounds like they're covering up a lot.
And they've been calling me. I done told them I can't have these conversations with you. The folks have filed a complaint. Get with the NAACP because they filed complaints with the NAACP here locally. And then I believe there's one in Indianapolis for the gentleman that was demoted from management back to a driver. I believe his is in Indianapolis, but we need help. The union is not strong. They fired the union president. He's in arbitration. So it's like this crazy letter from the attorney today, when we supposed to be talking about Rosa Parks, she's giving me this mess, but I did read it. And we'll use this for our report card. How many people you fired? They want to compare the previous CEO, him terminating 23 people versus them terminating 28. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. They brought in people of color that worked with him previously. We believe that this is a pattern out of Ann Arbor, is where he was at before. but we think that they bring these chief financial officers in to get rid of these people with tenure so that they can get their numbers down. I don't know if their pension and retirement, if they get fired, do that follow them or do they lose all of that? So we have people working with them with the NAACP and Metro. So it's a process, but yeah, so sad.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to stay on top of this. And that just goes to show, like with everything that we've heard so far, there are people that really do love their jobs and are really dedicated to these children because, probably the biggest fear with a lot of this is that you don't know who you're putting into your hands of your children. So this is really imperative that we get on top of this and we make sure that, also with hiring that, there is no history of sexual misconduct. There is no history of crashes that have gone unreported or even DUIs. There's some of these operators are literally going on the job drunk and driving kids. So that's something that's really serious, and we really need to let it know, as well as with wrongful terminations, because it doesn't make sense to do this, and given the fact that these folks have been operating these vehicles for years, for decades, that instance. So yes, we're definitely going to stay on top of that. And I'm going to get my team at LNS to really be on top of that as well. But with that, I wanted to see if there were any questions for the panelists, or if any of the panelists had any questions for any of the other panelists that presented. And I wanted to open the floor. Any questions?
I have a question for Corinne. When you said a different surface, a separate surface for the children walking, since there's no sidewalk and you don't want them like in that picture going out into the highway. And it sounds like most of what the walking routes or biking, whatever, would be is, if it's not through the woods, which is definitely scary, it would be more of a highway type road, not a super, expressway, but still you're competing with cars. So what I'm picturing is sort of like how they have bike lanes here and there's a different color, or they have a bus lane and it's painted a different color, or they widen it, or they put something down, which of course, by the time they spend all of that money, they should just hire some school bus drivers and be done, would be the so I'm wondering what if you have a little more on that, and what you meant by the separate surface. There are places in New York City where most of the school busing for students who do not have any of the civil rights provisions that Lupe referred to, IEP, temporary housing, foster, if they are just what we call general education student on the bus, it ends at the end of 6th grade. But there were a couple of places that had it up to 8th grade because of things like, hazardous, no sidewalks, too close to the highway, and walking in these isolated spots. And they had it taken away in the beginning of PIST, but the community fought back. They got it back. They grandfathered in those districts to proceed where the 7th and 8th graders can maintain their bus service as needed. It also took a fatality of a little girl named Ania Williams on her last day of 7th grade, unfortunately getting struck by a big truck while running to catch the city bus. And that was Staten Island. So, but parents don't always know. You have to still fill out a paper and ask for this variance based on the fact that your district is grandfathered in. So they're cutting things and it's hurting kids for sure. But I made more of a comment than a question, so I'll be quiet so Corinne can answer if she wants.
I'm sorry, Sarah, could you clarify, they get grandfathered in because there's not a safe route to get, they can't walk to a public bus stop, so they get a school bus?
Uh, yes, so instead of being like you finish the sixth grade, you're off, they are entitled to continue on the school bus for seventh grade and eighth grade because that used to be the rule for those areas, which are transit deserts, just some of the areas in New York City that are transit deserts. So for those who are from New York, Staten Island, and the Rockaways in Queens at this time are in that circumstance.
And then kids who are not in those circumstances would basically have to have a parent drive them to school or drive them to a train.
Right. And then it increases the pollution, it increases the traffic, it slows down the yellow buses that are out there for the younger kids and for everybody else. So yeah, it's a hot mess. But they did, win that sort of a concession that if you had it before, you can apply and have it again. So if my child if I just moved to Staten Island and I don't know this, and my kid has been, in seventh grade without a bus, and now they're starting eighth grade, I wouldn't necessarily realize that my child, even without an IEP, if they live far enough from the school, has the same right to yellow bus transportation. That's what we've understanding.
So the separate surfaces is actually a recommendation by Safe Routes to School, which is a nationwide movement to create safer transport for kids around the school. I'm sorry, transport to and from school. And a lot of their literature even supports how do you get more kids walking, right? We do want to decrease pollution. There are kids who live so close to school that it doesn't make sense to have a school bus unless there's absolutely no way for them to walk to school. So a lot of it is related to getting more kids to walk to school safely. In Howard County, we don't follow those guidelines, right? So when I had reached out to our transportation office with those materials, they said, well, in theory, we agree with those things, right? They're not going to deny it, but it doesn't mean that they're actually going to create rules that agree with those, right? So the way Howard County works, they go based in part by speed limit of roads. So I believe if you're 40 miles or over in your where you live, if the speed limit is 40 or over and there's no sidewalk there, then you would usually get a school bus. But if you're in a neighborhood, a lot of the older neighborhoods don't have sidewalks just based on regulations when different properties were built. And so you could be walking half a mile, a good bit of your walk to school could have no sidewalk and you could still not have a school bus. And that's what we've tried to push against. So that's separate. You don't have to have it to be considered a walker in Howard County. And we feel like there's certain areas where that means it's a little worse than others based on what's available. There are neighborhoods where there's plenty of sidewalks, even the ones that don't, and it doesn't mean you always have to have a trail. So there's a little bit of, there's a variety of situations where people are considered walkers and don't get school bus service. Does that answer the question, Sarah?
Yeah. I'm taking notes on that. I was thinking more, I was just trying to picture more like concretely, logistically, maybe in the places where those guidelines are followed, what does this surface look like? Like, would they count a shoulder or would they, be preparing? It's okay. It's fine. I'll email you. We could go on. There's bigger issues for other people can tackle. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So I was actually going to ask, so Maryland doesn't have a state law that protects school buses, right? So nobody in Maryland has to have a school bus. And if all schools, other than children who are guaranteed through an IEP or through special needs legislation, they are not required to have a school bus. So I was curious if anyone has proposed legislation in states where there isn't any protection and or if anyone can share maybe the history of their own state. In New York, I believe you, as you were describing, Sarah, it is part of a child's right to go to school. It's not just go to school, but to have some sort of transportation, whether it be public transport, public transport that others are on, or just a school bus for the younger children.
Hey, do you see my hand?
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
Keisha, go ahead.
Okay, so hey y'all, I'm Waukesha Howe. We did the Respect Cascade initiative here in Atlanta, Georgia. And so I'm so happy we have one of our board reps on here as well. Verify if I'm incorrect. So what we have here is that if you live within a mile of the school, you have to walk to school. But everyone else catches the school bus. Special education, I know that that can be written up in your IEP, and I know that may be a separate topic. School bus concerns, or if you need to transfer, because I had a son that had to go to school across town, so we had to write that in, and so we was able to get him to and from school some years back. But one thing that we were struggling with the kids who walk within a mile, and I think this is legislation maybe, they have to walk, but we were struggling with no sidewalks, proper street lightings. And so we went to we have a transportation commissioner here. At that time, his name was Josh Rowan. And so we kind of worked with him, Safe Routes to School, and we kind of got and Propel. We cleaned up we got them to clean up the streets, make sure the lines, check the lights, make sure our crossing guards were safe. And I want to say they did push some legislation here on a city level to slow the speed limit. A newer legislation, and Ms. Tamara, you may can speak to this, is that if you are caught speeding in and around a school zone, because we have, a lot of kids that walk to school because they live within that mile, you will get a fine. So that's something that we did to kind of try to deter people from speeding around the schools. We also worked on getting the signage fixed, because we do have signs that tell people how fast they're going near school, in the school zone. And so those are some of the things that we did here to kind of help our babies get to school safe, because what we found doing some research with one of the local colleges is that children was having terrible experiences before they got in school, which affect their ability to function throughout the school day. So I just want to lift that up. That's some of the things that we worked on.
And I can follow up on that really quickly. With the school zone speed cameras, we've been working with the state on that. So there's a special designation for, like, that has to get into, at least in our state, it has to receive a designation from the state, a particular intersection, so that it qualifies for the speed cameras. And so those have just gone into effect for several of our schools, and we're trying to work to make more of our high traffic and dangerous intersections part of the program. So just hope that other people can learn from that and take advantage of that as well.
Does the state of Georgia guarantee school bus service if you live more than a mile away, or is that Atlantan specific?
That is, it's stipulated by the district.
The district.
About our state in general has not kept up with transportation reimbursements or funding for transportation as the costs have been rising, which we're still trying to work with our legislative liaisons to try to get more funding from the state.
Can I jump in unless somebody else was about to talk, Bakari?
I had Molly on stack.
Oh, okay. I'll wait.
I was just going to say that something going on in New York beyond the legislative is that there's currently a movement to classify lack of availability and accessibility of school buses as an ADA violation, because it specifically essentially targets students with disabilities, because without the option of having school buses, they are forced to either use public transit or to navigate the landscape on their own, which, regardless of how much access to public transportation you have, is not something that any student can necessarily feasibly do. Or again, they have to have a caretaker with that kind of time on their hands. Like you were saying, in your case, it's a 5-mile walk. In New York City, it's a several hour and very expensive Lyft ride. And so the Citywide Council on Special Education on Saturday actually voted to kind of jump on a lawsuit that's currently happening. And that could be that's something that I think should be happening everywhere, because it is an ADA violation. And that might be a way for you to kind of nudge open that school bus door a little bit more forcefully when it's a civil rights issue.
So as far as I know, so children with special needs in Maryland, we are providing school buses. We've had concerns in Howard County, our school bus. There was a new contractor that was hired that's not been fulfilling certain expectations in their contract. But besides that, historically, my understanding is that special needs students have been getting their needs met, at least locally here in Howard County. I have a question though. If a parent has so let's just say a child, this came up, a parent asked me about this yesterday. So a parent is unable to walk their child to school and they have a disability. Does that child qualify for school bus service? No. So if you are a child of a parent with a disability and the parent cannot drive and also cannot walk you to school because of their disability, then you're just going to have to your family's going to have to find a way to hire somebody to do that for you.
Because it's not, because the child doesn't qualify for a disability, then they would not be entitled to that school bus service in Maryland. All the more reason to jump on the ADA bandwagon and be like, this is a violation, because it's still discrimination against the parent.
Right.
It's like I would just use that angle any way you can, essentially.
It seems like that's the one protection that's there for school bus service, or at least partly there for children with special needs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, this is just something else. An IEP qualifications vary from state to state, obviously, but also if your right to a school bus is dependent on having an IEP, one of the eligibility criteria for having an IEP is not doing well in school. And obviously, that rules out a lot of students who, for whom the burden of doing well in school is seen externally at home. And so therefore, if a student, for instance, like a student with autism who is excellent at masking, they would not qualify for an IEP, but should still be able to have access to a school bus. And that's something else to think about. Because being dependent on an IEP to be allowed, basically, like it's 3 different issues. And there's an enormous gap in having a disability and having access to a bus.
You're off of that. Sara, you had another comment?
I did, and possibly someone like Paulette might correct me even better. The students with disabilities are covered under the IDEA law, and that's from age 3 to 21, and some of them under the Section 504. And I believe, in the state education law, transportation is an educational service. There are counties all over the state that have, busing because it's more rural and things like that. And in the wording that I've seen and quoted that we quote all the time, is that transportation is a related service. So academic service is what's going to happen in the classroom to help that student access the curriculum. But if the student needs speech therapy, physical occupational therapy, those are related services that, also bridge you to be able to do those things. And transportation is one of those. So I don't know if that helps. There really should be definitely there if there's places where there's no busing, and there are students with IEPs, it is something that has to be on the IEP. It's not every kid with an IEP gets busing automatically. But if they need it, they need it. And I really appreciate what Molly just said about the disabled parents, because we definitely saw in the lack of in the absence of a good school bus contract for the union workers, there was all of this blah 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 from the district about we're gonna give you cabs, and you just have to ride your kid to school and back, and we're gonna give you a metro card, and we'll give you a metro card for the parent, not just the kid. And that completely erased parents who cannot physically be the ones, shepherding their child back and forth for those reasons of disability, not to mention the ones who can't do it because of work, which I think have already mentioned. But, there's really no substitute for an organized system of getting those numbers of kids where they need to be and not have them miss these other services that I kind of defined a second ago. I'll stop. There was somebody, at Georgia. So I've been in rural Georgia, and they have general ed busing, at least the counties that I stayed in. They actually put the bus stops in the newspaper, so you knew you didn't have to wait for some special thing. That was obviously not door to door, because that's confidential. Who needs that? But for the kids who just live far, because there's only, so many schools per county, they could find out where their bus was. It was not a secret. It was not something where our parents here are like, what's my route? Where's my, hashtag where's my bus? That's the thing here. So I'll be quiet.
Absolutely. And yeah, I grew up in rural Georgia, so I knew the whole experience of catching the bus. And normally I would have to catch the bus with, like, in elementary school, I was riding with middle schooler and high schoolers. So I think that was also a big thing of, like, where these schools are located. So yeah, all of this is really relevant, and especially, with, this emphasis on safety and, what happens with, this whole, it seems like a predatory microtransit to just pass it off to say, I'll get you a cab, I'll get you an Uber, I'll get you a Lyft. But it still doesn't change the fact that a lot of the system is still broken. You're still trying to distract us from the issue that there's still no comprehensive transportation for my child, and especially if my child has special needs. So I think this is great, and especially to uplift in the sense of being able to show that there's an issue and try to get the powers that be to fix it. So I thank you all for your comments. Any other questions or comments? Any questions? Any comments?
Where's the shy people? Come on.
Well, hearing none, I want to conclude us with this and thank everyone for joining us. This has been a really riveting conversation. I will go ahead and say this now because I promised Sara I would. But huge thank you to Sara for putting all this together. She's been really instrumental of getting a lot of the great folks who have had a lot of this breadth of information together. So huge thank you to Sara. Huge thank you for all of our panelists and everyone that joined us for this conversation. We're going to continue to have more of this. And like I said, there's been a lot of talk about ADA accessibility and disability. We're definitely going to have that program in December. So if you'd like to join us for that, or if you'd like to be on the panel, let me know so that we can put it together. We're already stacked as far as that, but we could do another one just like this to where we bring on folks and we could just share information because that's all we're about, community and being able to each one teach one. So huge thank you to all. Like I said, check out the links. This will definitely be uploaded onto our Transit Equity Network YouTube page. So go and subscribe to that. Subscribe to everyone that put all the links in the chat, which we will definitely share with everyone. And as always, hope you have a really wonderful weekend. And I will catch you back here later. Thank you all.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Bakari.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank
See
you.
y'all at the Disability Pride Parade, New Yorkers.
Thank you all.
Good night.